Now, before you say anything, I was set on trying Warframe before Pete Parsons took Bungie out back and told it to tell him about the rabbits.
And I get the Tinder rabbit.
Although I would be lying if I said it didn't make Warframe look more appealing. But that's besides the point. This game is good. Like, really good. But chances are you didn't need me to tell you that. It's a known fact that the movement in this game is god tier, and I mean, it's been around for over 10 years now, so it can't be bad. Right? Anyway, I'm not here to give a critique about the gameplay, because my only criticism of it is that I had to change my slide button to a mouse button, because my pinky started hurting. Oh, and that sometimes the boss designs are kind of annoying. And building times. The build time for a single Warframe is 3 days! No, today I'm going to critique the one thing I am able to criticize. The story delivery. Now you may be asking, what gives you the right to criticize the game's story? Well, you see, I'm what they call a certified story enjoyer. I never once skipped a cutscene the entire time I played Final Fantasy XIV. And as such, I've got some things to say about how this game's story is delivered in the early game. I say early game because I'm making this video while I wait for my necromech to cook. Yeah, that's right, I'm playing this game free to play, so I've got some time to kill.
Building times.
Now, before I start, I just want to clarify I'm not here to criticize the story itself. While some of the first missions are showing their age, they aren't bad in any sense of the word. They're just maybe a little boring in delivery, that's all. No, I want to talk about the order that the quests are given to new players when you first start the game. You see, Warframe suffers from its own success, meaning that it's been around long enough now that things have been implemented and added, which when they were added made total sense, but to a new player now, it comes across in an order that's kind of confusing. I've got 3 main examples of this in differing orders of severity. The Wave Rider quest for the Ureli Warframe, the Duviri Paradox side quest, and the Heart of Deimos story quest. The Wave Rider is my least impactful example because you can literally just ignore it up until a certain point. You get access to the Wave Rider immediately after completing the Vox Solari quest, meaning that if you complete it as soon as you can, you are lacking critical context for just what the fuck is going on during the ending. I say this with authority because I did this, but stopped the second that I heard Neferoyo mention that there was a buyer on Deimos, which was a planet I hadn't been to at that time. Now I get why the quest is given to you when it is. You've just done Vox Solari, been introduced to Fortuna, and aside from giving you the blueprints to Ureli, the Wave Rider quest also introduces you to the Ventkid Syndicate based in Fortuna. I get that. But the fact that the whole conclusion of the quest hinges around this buyer from Deimos means that the player is missing out on so much context for like who it actually is. And even when it's revealed who it is,
hello, dear.
They would have no fucking clue. Look, I understand that rewriting the quest is a massive task, and I'm not asking for that. I'm just saying, from the sense of a narrative standpoint, wouldn't it make more sense to wait until the player has done the Heart of Deimos quest for this to be available? Ascending the ladder of impact, next up we've got... This time, instead of unlocking just a blueprint and a syndicate, this mission unlocks an open world, its own story missions, and an incredibly useful way of grinding for Warframes. Now, I'm going to come clean here and say that I haven't actually done this mission yet. You may ask me why, and the answer is really simple. Context. You see, the Duviri Paradox was added after the new war campaign, meaning that its story both provides context as well as benefits from the context of the events of the new war campaign, and I, as a story enjoyer, would really like to know that context. Initially, you could start Duviri Paradox as soon as you completed Vor's Prize, but in a recent change this has been pushed back so that new players only get access to Duviri after completing the Uranus Junction on Saturn. This is somewhere around the middle of the early game, I think. As I said, I'm only up to the New War arc, so I'm not exactly sure where it sits on the timeline of early to late game. Now, like with the Wave Rider quest, you can simply just ignore this quest until after the New War like I'm doing, but the fact this quest locks behind it some really useful stuff makes it a little more annoying to put off rather than just waiting for a Warframe blueprint and access to a syndicate. And finally, my main point of contention with early game story and the whole reason I made this video, the Heart of Deimos quest. The Heart of Deimos is a main story quest that is required to progress past Mars. To give a little perspective, at this point in the game, a new player has probably either just completed Once a Week or Archwing, and both of these quests were added in 2014 and follow the story on from Vor's Prize. Heart of Deimos was added to the game in August 2020 and was the final story mission before the New War campaign. So you can see how this leads to a little bit of narrative dissonance for new players. Quick spoiler warning, but narratively the quest sees the player traveling to the moon of Deimos as it has suddenly appeared in the origin system covered in the infection. At this point the player would have a rudimentary understanding of what the infection is, so that's fine, but then you're introduced to the Entrati family. A family of Orokin. Now, forgive my confusion here, but isn't this a major spoiler? Narratively, the player isn't supposed to know Oricans still exist until the reveal of Ballas when he yoinks the Lotus, and I'm sorry, but robbing the entire narrative punch from that reveal for an open world that the player isn't going to be able to do anything in until much later down the line feels like a bit of a misfire. As I said, Heart of Deimos was the last thing released before the New War, meaning that on release, people playing would have already completed Apostasy Prologue and experienced Ballas' reveal as it was intended, but that's robbed from new players at the moment. And as much as I enjoy slaughtering fish for Daughter— oh no, she's got glasses. Oh no.
Specimen.
I could have waited to meet her instead of blowing my narrative load early like some creative writing major being touched by a woman for the first time. Look, I'm not a game developer, and all props to DE, but would it really be that hard to just not make Deimos a mandatory quest to do at that point in the game? Ideally, I'd love for some sort of instance world state where Deimos appears on your map like it does in lore, but I'd settle for it simply requiring the completion of Apostasy's prologue, or hell, even the sacrifice for it to unlock. If nothing else, just to keep the narrative punch of Ballas' appearance and the subsequent reveals intact. I don't know, it feels wrong to have it there. I get that you want to have the introduction of all your open worlds done and out of the way, giving players all of their options as soon as possible, but realistically, a new player isn't going to be able to do much on Deimos at that point. Again, I'm not a game developer, but it just feels too early to introduce that. Look, the story is good. Like, really good, and that's why this stuff bugs me so much. I get that playing through the story chronologically or as it was released would be difficult to configure, I understand that, but I can't help but feel like the way that it's currently given to players prevents them from fully enjoying everything this game has to offer narratively. Alright, that's it. I wanted to put something out there while I was waiting, because I really do enjoy this game and I enjoy the story. It's just, yeah, the way it is at the moment, it's just a little confusing, that's all. It's confusing, and I feel like for such a good story, the way that it's given is just doing itself a disservice. I promise, I'm only doing this out of a sense of enjoyment, but if you'll excuse me, I now have to go and figure out how the fuck to get my space mother back.
Get your ass back here!